How do you judge success? More specifically, how do you judge a successful ministry? In most conversations about successful churches are any indication, there are really only two things that seem to count: pennies and posteriors, dimes and derrieres, quarters and hindquarters, bucks and, well, you get the idea. This flows into every area of conversations about church. When a group of people get together and start discussing their churches with one another, I promise this is a thing that really happens sometimes, they will give each other a quick shorthand explanation of their church that sounds something like, well, you know, there's about 50 people in worship on a Sunday, and we've got like 70 active members, and our budget's around $120,000. And then someone else will share their statistics, and around they go. If you start reading literature on how to become a healthy church, you find very quickly that health is tied to these two items as well. That to become a healthy church, at some point you will see an increase in attendance and an increase in budget, or vice versa. The only way to become a healthy church is first to increase your attendance and your budget. And while there are folks with huge churches and large budgets that will tell you their churches are in no way even a little bit healthy, the myth continues. When we talk about church success, attendance and giving are all that seem to matter. And yet,
John's disciples informed him about all these things. So John called two of his disciples and sent them to Jesus to ask, "Are you the one who is to come, or should we look for another?" When the men came to Jesus, they said, "John the Baptist has sent us to you to ask, 'Are you the one who is to come, or should we look for another?'" At that very time, Jesus cured many people of diseases, sickness, and evil spirits, and granted sight to many who were blind. So he answered them, "Go tell John what you have seen and heard. The blind see, the lame walk, lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, the poor have good news proclaimed to them. Blessed is anyone who takes no offense at me."
now let's talk about Jesus' ministry for a quick minute, because I don't want you to get the wrong idea here. Jesus was kind of a big deal. By the time this story is told in the 7th chapter of the book of Luke, the author has already told us about 10 different times when a crowd of people surrounded Jesus wanting to hear from him, which is especially impressive when you consider that his public ministry doesn't even start till chapter 4. By the end of the book, there will be 22 more crowds that come to see Jesus. There will be 5,000 men with their wives and children at one time. There will be many thousands of people at another. Sometimes the word crowd, though huge, apparently is too small for Luke because he has to give the plural. He has to say there were many crowds surrounding Jesus. I don't know how big a crowd is, but I assume 2 crowds is bigger than 1 crowd. There are so many people following Jesus and wanting to hear from him. He is, by all metrics, a very successful person when it comes to attendance. And as far as we can tell, he's not doing so bad on the finance side either, because he's managing to secure enough donations from his followers, not only for himself to get by, but for 12 of his closest friends to travel around with him, who have all left their jobs, all left any source of income, and are able to go around with Jesus, be fed, be clothed, and be housed. When it comes to nickels and noses, Jesus has plenty of both. So these followers of John the Baptist come, and John had spent his ministry saying, look, there's a really important person coming, and I'm not that person, but I'm going to tell you who that person is. That person is going to set everything right. That person is going to give us the freedom that we need and that we've been waiting for centuries. I'm not him, but I'll know him when I see him. And at the beginning of Jesus' ministry, John had been going, that's the guy, that's him, go follow him. But John's ministry continued, and people didn't leave John, and there was no great uprising against the Roman Empire, and it appears that John's gotten a little nervous. So he gets some of his followers together and says, go see Jesus. Can you just check and make sure he's the right guy? Because I might have screwed up there. We might be looking for someone else. I'm not so sure anymore. They go to Jesus and they say, are you the guy? Are you the one that we've been waiting for? And he answers. But he doesn't say, hey, look at all these dudes and ducats I got going on over here. I am the first megachurch pastor. Clearly, I am the right man. He could have done that, but he doesn't. Instead, he tells them to go back and give John a different kind of report. He says, go back and tell John what you see. Not that the crowds are large, not that my disciples are well fed, but that sick people are being made well. Struggling people are being given a fresh start. People in the grip of poverty have hope once more. That is the measure of a successful ministry in Jesus' mind. Not a surplus budget and a full sanctuary, but lives being changed. Even lives being saved. Sure, Jesus had both. But he started by changing lives, and the rest came after. Now, today is our annual meeting, and we're going to spend some time talking about money, because that's what we do at annual meeting. But today I want to propose something different for measuring how our church is doing. I could stand up here and tell you, hey, we've seen an increase in attendance over the last year. We've seen an increase in giving over the last year. This is great. We're moving in the right direction. Clearly, this is evidence of church health. And despite the fact that most of our attendees are home due to the snow right now, that would be true. We have, in fact, seen those things. But that's not what makes a successful ministry. It makes a successful business, but not a ministry. And so I've constructed this thing over here that I hope looks a little bit like a thermometer, maybe. It's a tube in a little glass dealie. And I have these red balls. Don't let your children near them because they fit perfectly into a Nerf rival gun. Just letting you know that ahead of time. And I'm calling this the Church Vitality Meter. And it is all about seeing lives changed, even saved. So if you see a life that has been changed by the ministry of this church, it's pretty simple. You pick up a ball, and you put it in. When you see a child baptized into the family of God, put the ball in. When you see people being fed because of our collection of food every single week that goes to pantries and enables families to eat. Put a few more in. Look around at all of the things that this church is doing, possibly using money, possibly not, but is seeing lives changed for the better. I could upend this entire container based just on what was done with angel tree and heifer in the last month and a half. I'm not going to do that, so I want to save some balls for you. We are in the business of changing lives and saving lives. And when I say saved, I am not talking about that stereotypical Christian idea of, have you been saved? Have you said the special words so that you're gonna go to heaven instead of hell when you die? When Jesus saved people, it was then and there. People who couldn't walk in a society where that was a death sentence were given their legs back by Jesus. People who couldn't see in a society where that was seen as sin and the family's option was either shun the blind person or be shunned themselves received sight and their lives were saved. People who had a mild skin rash, that's what leprosy usually was, and would have been sent outside of the city to spend the rest of their days in squalor and therefore keep their rash, were healed by Jesus and had their lives saved. We too can see lives changed and saved by the actions that we take. And when we do, I want to see this meter grow. I want to see how fast we can fill it. I want to see how many times we can fill it in a month, in a year, in 5 years. Because it's not about how many people are in the pews. It's not about how many dollars are in the plates. It's about the lives. Earlier this week on Facebook, I asked, along with my weekly devotional, how have you seen lives changed by the church? Maybe some of you read that and thought about it. Maybe some of you are thinking about it for the first time. But before we go back into the social hall to enjoy delicious food and a wonderful budget, I want you to think about this. And on your way out, if you have seen a life changed by the church, well, I think you know what to do by now. Let's think on that as we sing our hymn, Take My Life and Let It Be. Please rise.